I don't usually wait around after closing. The shop smells like metal dust and burnt wiring by then. Things that cling to your clothes long after you leave. But that evening, I stayed. The air was too still, the clock ticking too loud. The kind of silence that makes you aware of every small thing you're avoiding. She came in just before the lights would have gone out. Not rushed, not apologetic, just present. A woman in her 40s, maybe a bit more, wearing confidence like it was something she'd grown used to, not something she performed. Her hair was tied back, not neatly, but deliberately, like she'd done it herself without checking the mirror. There was a faint line of exhaustion under her eyes, but it didn't make her look weak. It made her look real. She held out a car key fob, the edge worn smooth. "Battery's dead," she said. "You do replacements, right?" "Yeah," I said. My voice cracked a little. Usually before closing. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. More like she'd caught me bluffing at something. Then I guess I made it just in time. There wasn't much else said after that. She waited while I replaced the tiny battery, the metallic click echoing in the quiet. She didn't fill the silence, and somehow that made me talk more about the weather, about how old cars don't die. They just find new excuses to stay around. She listened. Not politely. Actually listened. Eyes steady. No phone. No interruptions. When I handed her the fob, our fingers brushed, barely a second. Static, maybe. Or something pretending to be static. She tilted her head slightly. "You're new here." "Few months," I said. Still pretending I know what I'm doing. "Pretending," she repeated softly, like testing the weight of the word. Then she looked past me, to the cluttered shelves, the scattered screws, the half-repaired drill I'd abandoned earlier. "You do good work for someone pretending." There was no reason for that to hit the way it did. But it did. She paid in cash. Folded the receipt without looking at it. Then she glanced toward the open door, where the evening had started bleeding into night. "Well," she said, "don't follow me." And I don't know what made me say it. Maybe the way she said it. Half a warning, half an invitation. Maybe the fact that the air between us suddenly felt too charged to just let her leave. Then lead me instead. For a heartbeat, she stopped. Not shocked. More like she was deciding whether to laugh or not. Her hand lingered on the doorknob, and she turned just enough that I saw her mouth curve into something unreadable. A smirk, a secret, maybe a test. Then she walked out. No goodbyes. No footsteps slowing. Just the faint sound of her heels fading against the pavement until the night swallowed it. I stood there longer than I should have, the faint smell of her perfume still hanging in the air. Something clean, sharp, not sweet. The kind of scent that doesn't ask to be noticed, it just stays with you. The next day, I fixed the drill I'd left unfinished. Cleaned the counter twice. Checked the door every time I heard footsteps outside. I told myself it was nothing. Just a customer. Just a coincidence. Just static. But that night, when I turned off the lights and locked up, I caught myself glancing at the road she'd disappeared down. Empty, dark, still humming with the echo of her voice. I don't know why those words stuck. Maybe because I'd never said anything that bold in my life. Maybe because she didn't laugh. Maybe because, somewhere in that pause before she left, she almost turned around. She came back 3 days later. I'd convinced myself she wouldn't. The morning had started slow. A half-empty coffee gone cold on the workbench. The hum of an old radio too faint to keep me company. When the door creaked open, I didn't even look up right away. I just knew it was her. There was a stillness that came with her, like the air stopped adjusting itself until she was done entering the room. "Something's wrong again," she said. Her voice wasn't impatient, just tired. Like she'd already had a long day before it even began. She held out the same key fob. "It's not the battery this time. I think it's me." I blinked. She smiled faintly, half embarrassed. "The car didn't start because I forgot to put it in park." I tried not to laugh, but it came out anyway. She rolled her eyes, but didn't seem offended. "Go ahead," she said. "You're allowed to laugh." So I did, softly, careful not to ruin the small, human moment she'd just given me. She leaned against the counter while I checked her repair ticket. The sunlight hit her from the window, soft and uneven, catching on the fine lines around her eyes. She looked like someone who'd lived a few different lives and hadn't quite decided which one she missed the most. You work too hard, I said, before realizing how it sounded. She raised an eyebrow. You can tell that from my car trouble? No, I said, fumbling for words. From the way you stand. Like you're still holding something heavy, even when your hands are empty. She went quiet. That was the thing about her. Silence wasn't awkward. It was deliberate. She looked down at her hands, tracing the seam of her jacket with one finger. Her nails were short, the kind that belonged to someone who used them, not displayed them. Work, she said finally, and everything that comes with it. There was something in the way she said everything that made me want to ask what that meant, but I didn't. Instead, I handed her the fob again, pretending to focus on anything else. Thanks, she said, almost too softly. You didn't have to. I wanted to, I said, before I could stop myself. She glanced up, and that look, that half second of stillness, felt heavier than any touch. Her lips parted slightly, like she might say something, but then she didn't. She only nodded once and turned to leave. Her hand lingered on the doorknob again, the same way it had last time. You should be careful, she said without looking back. Some people read too much into kindness. Do you? I asked. She hesitated, just long enough to let me know she'd heard the question. Then she stepped outside, her voice barely reaching me through the doorway. Only when it feels like something I shouldn't want. And for a moment, as the door closed behind her, I realized the shop smelled less like metal and more like her perfume. Faint, impossible to forget, and already too close. The storm started earlier than the forecast promised. By the time she showed up, the rain was coming down in sheets, hammering the corrugated roof like someone knocking from above. The shop was already half dark, just the old fluorescent light over my workbench humming like a trapped insect. She stood at the door for a moment, shaking the rain from her hair, water dripping off the sleeves of a thin beige trench coat that didn't look built for weather like this. Car stalled again, she said, almost breathless. This time I swear it's not my fault. I laughed under my breath, reaching for the towel I used to wipe oil off my hands. She took it without asking, pressing it to her face, the soft fabric catching the drops at her jawline. Her skin was cold. I could tell even from a distance. I should have told her to wait in the car. I should have been professional. But the storm was too loud, the night too quiet inside, and something about the way she crossed her arms tightly around herself made the world feel smaller. Let me guess, I said. Battery. Starter. Bad. Worse than bad. She exhaled a short laugh, one that never fully reached her eyes. I offered her coffee from the old machine in the corner. She didn't refuse. She leaned against the counter, the same spot as the last time, holding the cup in both hands like she needed its warmth more than its taste. Her hair was damp, some strands sticking to the curve of her neck. I shouldn't have noticed that. I noticed anyway. I didn't plan on ending up here, she said after a while. You know that, right? I know. Her gaze flicked to me. Not shy, not bold either. Just suspended. I've got a friend who keeps saying I should let people help me more. I told her I don't need help. She took a slow sip. But then you keep being here. The rain grew louder. The sound wrapped around us like it wanted to hold the silence still. I stepped closer to reach for the parts cabinet behind her, and for a second, we were too close. Not touching, just standing in the same stretch of air, close enough that I could feel the damp warmth radiating off her. She didn't step back. Then her phone rang. She didn't look at the screen right away, just stared at it, her jaw tightening, the faint lines around her mouth deepening. Finally, she turned the screen toward me, not deliberately, just enough for me to see a name. Michael. No context, but enough weight in the way her hand trembled slightly when she declined the call. I should go, she whispered. It's still raining, I said. I know. She placed the coffee cup down slowly, as if leaving something behind she didn't want to name. When she walked toward the door, I almost said something. Something reckless, like stay, or tell me who Michael is, or don't walk out into that rain alone. But all I did was take a step forward, just one, not enough to stop her. She paused at the door, the storm framing her silhouette in harsh white flashes. Your trouble, she said softly. Yeah, I breathed. So are you. She didn't turn around, and I didn't stop her, but my hand lingered in the air, just shy of reaching for her. long after the door closed and the rain swallowed the night. ChatGPT said, Part 3, Proximity breeds confusion. The storm started just as I was locking up. It wasn't the dramatic movie kind. No thunder crashing right on cue. Just steady, quiet rain that painted everything in blurred edges and silver streaks. I'd propped the door open for a second, waiting for the downpour to ease up, when headlights cut through the curtain of water. Her car. She didn't rush out of it this time. She sat there for a few seconds, engine running, windshield wipers moving in a rhythm too precise to be casual. When she finally stepped inside, her hair was damp at the ends, raindrops clinging to her jacket. Your timing's suspicious, I said, trying to keep it light. She brushed water from her sleeves. Or unlucky. My wipers died halfway home. She stood in the doorway like someone who hadn't decided if they wanted to stay or not. The rain behind her filled the silence between us, soft and insistent. I grabbed an old towel from the shelf and held it out to her. She stared at it for a heartbeat too long before taking it. You're not supposed to still be open, she said. I'm not. She gave me that half smile again. Not wide, just enough to make everything feel a little less cold. Then why are you here? Because I keep hoping you will be. I didn't say it. I like the quiet, I said instead. We ended up sitting on the workbench, the towel crumpled between her hands, steam rising faintly from the radiator in the corner. The shop smelled like wet concrete and oil. Her presence shifted the room. Not brighter, not softer, just different. I don't usually do this, she said after a long pause. Show up in the rain? No. She looked down at the floor, voice dropping lower. Let someone see me when I'm tired. The way she said it, like a confession disguised as a throwaway line, made something tighten in my chest. She wasn't just tired from the rain. It was the kind of tired that lived beneath the skin. I wanted to reach out, to brush the raindrops still caught in her hair, to close the space between us just enough for it to mean something. But I didn't. I just watched her hands. She fidgeted with the corner of the towel, thumb pressing against the fabric like she needed something to hold on to. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. One glance, and her expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. A tiny stiffening of her shoulders, her lips pressing into a thin line. She flipped the phone face down without answering. Everything okay? I asked carefully. Not really, she whispered. Then she forced a small breath. But that's not your problem. It would have been easier if she'd left then. But she didn't. She stayed sitting there, inches away, the storm pressing against the windows like it wanted in. I felt the weight of the distance between us, small, electric, dangerous. Her hand brushed the workbench near mine, almost touching but not quite. A shared gravity. She looked at me then, not with warmth, not with distance either. Just caught. I should go, she said softly. But she didn't stand. And neither did I. The rain drummed harder against the roof, filling the silence we couldn't. Her hand hovered, half a breath from mine. If either of us moved an inch, the whole night would change. But no one did. She stood outside the glass door for a moment before walking in, her reflection half blurred by the afternoon glare. No jacket this time, no excuse in her hand, just her. And that alone made my pulse trip over itself. I was driving past, she said. Didn't mean to stop. Then why did you? She hesitated. The way she looked at me wasn't direct. More like she was trying to find the safest version of the truth. Because I didn't want to keep wondering if you'd still be here. Something in the way she said it landed deeper than it should have. The radio was on low in the corner, a song I didn't recognize fading into static. I turned it off. The quiet after was almost too sharp. She walked around the counter, trailing her fingers along the edge, slow, deliberate. I'd never noticed how her movements always carried restraint, like she measured every gesture before letting it exist. You ever feel, she said quietly, like you've built a life that doesn't fit anymore? I didn't answer right away. I could have said yes, because I had. Every day felt like something borrowed from someone else's plan. But what came out instead was, yeah, feels like wearing someone else's coat. Warm, but not yours. She smiled faintly, eyes soft but distant. Exactly. For a while, neither of us spoke. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the space between us, spinning too slow to matter. She was close enough that I could see the small scar near her wrist, pale against her skin, a detail that shouldn't have meant anything, but suddenly did. People my age, she said, aren't supposed to do this. Do what? Stay in places they don't need to be. Talk to people they shouldn't. Feel. She stopped herself, shaking her head. Never mind. Her voice cracked a little at the end, barely audible, but enough to pull the air out of the room. I wanted to say something, to tell her she wasn't doing anything wrong, but the words felt too small, too simple for what this was. Instead, I said, "You don't have to explain." She looked at me then, really looked. And there it was again, that mix of exhaustion, curiosity, and something dangerously close to tenderness. "Don't make this easier for me," she said softly. "You're too young to know what regret feels like yet." "I know enough to recognize it," I said. Her eyes flickered, a small, involuntary tremor of truth. She stepped closer, and for the first time, I didn't move back. We were close enough to feel the same breath, the same hesitation. Her hand hovered like she might touch my arm, but it never landed. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "How am I looking? Like you think I'm something worth ruining for." The words hit harder than any confession could. She turned away before I could respond, her voice barely holding together. "This isn't normal anymore," she said. And then, quieter, almost breaking, "I don't know how to stop wanting something I'm not allowed to want." She didn't come around for almost 2 weeks after that day. I told myself it was over, that the silence meant she'd done the right thing, drawn her line, gone back to wherever she belonged. Then one evening, just as the sky started turning the color of wet steel, she appeared again. No knock, no hesitation, just walked in and stood by the doorway, clutching something in her hand. A small envelope, creased like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. "You're still here," she said. "You sound surprised." "I shouldn't be." She looked around the shop, eyes landing on the half-fixed fan I'd been working on. "You keep things going even when they shouldn't, don't you?" She smiled faintly, but her voice had a crack in it this time, the kind that doesn't belong to laughter. I wiped my hands on a rag. "What's that?" I nodded toward the envelope. She hesitated, then set it on the counter between us. "You remind me of someone." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. She opened the envelope carefully. Inside was an old photograph. A young man, maybe my age, standing beside a car half covered in dust. Same kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. She placed it in front of me. "My brother," she said quietly. "He died 6 years ago. Drunk driver. It was a storm that night, too. The air changed. Even the sound of the rain outside seemed to dull, as if the world had leaned closer to listen." "I'm sorry," I said, "because what else was there?" She nodded once. "You shouldn't be. You just look like him sometimes. The way you talk, the way you wait before answering. I thought maybe that's why I kept coming here. Maybe I just wanted to remember him without the ache." Her eyes glistened, not from tears but from restraint, the kind that costs more than crying ever could. "I didn't mean for it to become whatever this is," she said, voice unsteady. I stared at the photo again. The resemblance wasn't obvious, not really. But there was something in the way he stood, a quiet awkwardness, like he didn't know where to put his hands. It was enough. "You don't have to explain," I murmured. "But I do," she said, "because it's not fair to you. You didn't ask to be a mirror." The words stung in ways I couldn't describe. A part of me wanted to pull back, to escape the space we'd built out of confusion and proximity, but another part just wanted to understand why my chest hurt hearing it. She took the photo back, sliding it carefully into the envelope. Her fingers brushed mine, a familiar touch that now felt like goodbye in disguise. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the past finds its way back wearing the wrong face." She left before I could answer. The doorbell chimed once, and then nothing but rain. When I locked up that night, I found the photograph still on the counter. She'd forgotten it. Or maybe she hadn't. In the picture, her brother's smile looked almost uncertain, like he'd been caught between leaving and staying. And for the first time, I realized, so had she. She didn't come the next day, or the one after that. But the photograph stayed. It sat on the counter for nearly a week, edges curling slightly, her brother's uncertain smile catching the light every time I walked by. I told myself I'd give it back when she came, and that if she didn't, maybe that was the answer. But she did. Late afternoon, same as before. She came in without words, her eyes softer now, maybe tired in a different way. No pretense, no reason to be here. Just an unspoken acceptance that silence would do. You left this, I said, handing her the photo. She looked down at it for a long time, thumb tracing the edge. No, she said. I think I meant to. The honesty in that single sentence undid something inside me. She set the photo aside carefully, like it no longer needed to say what it once did. I've been thinking, she said, about that night. The storm, the silence, the things we didn't say. I nodded. Words felt clumsy in the moment, so I waited. It wasn't you reminding me of him, she said finally. It was the way you listen. He used to listen like that. Not because he wanted to fix things, just because he cared to know. Her voice cracked softly, and before I knew it, she was sitting on the workbench beside me, the same way she had during that first ring. The same quiet between us, but it felt different now. Not tense, not forbidden. Just real. I don't know what this is, she whispered. I only know I stop pretending when I'm here. That was the moment. The collapse. Not into confession or impulse, but into truth. I didn't reach for her right away. I just let the silence settle, let it stretch long enough to mean something. Then, slowly, I placed my hand on the bench, close enough for hers to find it if she wanted to. She did. Her fingers slipped against mine, tentative, like a secret we'd both been keeping from ourselves. There was no spark, no cinematic rush, just a quiet certainty that this, whatever this was, had been coming for a long time. I can't promise anything, she said. Not clarity. Not tomorrow. I'm not asking, I replied. She exhaled then. A small, shaky breath that sounded almost like relief. Her shoulder brushed mine. Outside, the wind had picked up again, stirring the sign that hung over the door. Inside, everything felt still. We sat like that for a while, two people who'd run out of reasons to look away. The photograph lay forgotten on the counter, a relic of something finally released. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. This doesn't have to be right, she said. It just has to be true. I turned to her, and she met my gaze, not with certainty, but with surrender. And then, in a moment so small it could have been mistaken for stillness, she leaned her forehead against mine. No words, no promises, just breath, shared and trembling. Outside, the rain began again, softer this time, as if the world had decided to exhale with us. It's strange what time does to a memory. It doesn't erase it. It just sands the edges down until all that's left is the quiet shape of how it once felt. It's been months since that night in the shop. She doesn't come by much anymore. Maybe once every few weeks, sometimes not at all. No reason, no explanation. Just the kind of rhythm that life finds when people stop forcing it to mean something neat. But when she does show up, it's always the same. She leans against the counter, coffee in hand, hair tied back in that same careless way, and I catch myself thinking that this, just this, is enough. No hidden tension, no storm waiting to break. Just the small, steady peace that comes after the ache. I don't think what we had was ever about love in the way people like to describe it. It was something quieter, a reminder that connection doesn't always have to last to be real. That sometimes, two people meet at the wrong time and still manage to leave each other better than they found one another. She told me once, during one of those late afternoons when the light turned amber through the window, that she'd finally started sleeping again. You made me remember what it feels like to be seen without being needed, she said. And I think that's what changed in me too. Before her, I wanted things to mean everything, for every glance, every word, to add up to something permanent. But she taught me that sometimes the most honest kind of love isn't about holding on. It's about learning when to stay still and let something beautiful pass through you. There's a calm that comes after the storm, not because the world is fixed, but because you've finally stopped fighting the weather. Now, when I close the shop each evening, I still hear the echo of that first night, the faint hum of rain, her voice saying, "Don't follow me," and my reckless, half-whispered reply, "Then lead me instead." I didn't know it then, But that was the beginning of every truth I've learned since. That following doesn't always mean chasing, and leading doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes, it just means walking beside someone long enough to understand who they really are, even if it's only for a few steps. There's a photo on the wall now, not of her, not of us, but of the old workbench. The same one where she once sat, towel in hand, rain in her hair, trying to hide how tired she was. It's there to remind me that even brief moments can change the course of a quiet life. And if you're still listening, still watching, maybe that's what I'd tell you, too. Don't wait for the perfect timing or the kind of love that makes sense on paper. Just notice the people who make you feel seen when you don't even know you've been invisible. Because sometimes, that's all it takes.